A few weeks ago, I took Pumbaa to a garden centre to do some training. The goal of the training session was to work on his loose lead walking in a new environment. His loose lead walking from the house has become really, really nice. He does it automatically. However, if I take him in the van somewhere, his default is to pull before walking nicely. And once I've reminded him that it is actually still loose lead walking, he will walk nicely. But I'd really like him to get out and assume loose lead walking before pulling. A couple of years ago, this would have been a really big task for him. Pumbaa has got a bite history with people, is people reactive sometimes, and can be dog reactive. And garden centres are quite tight spaces, this specific garden centre. And very often people come at you from directions you're not expecting. So instead of being on a path out and about where people can come from forward or backwards, people can come from any direction. And whenever you take a dog into public, you have the situation where people are going to try and interact with that dog, or let their dogs come over and interact with your dog, which is perfectly, if you're in a pet-friendly shop, perfectly reasonable. I think you should be willing to deal with that situation, and I was. And Pumbaa is fine in those situations 90% of the time now, and if he's not, I can manage it really quite well. So we went in, and I went at a relatively quiet time because I knew I wanted to work on his loose lead rather than his reactivity. And if it was a busy Sunday on like a nice sunny day, not that we've had any of them, I knew he'd struggle if there were any children present. So I went purposely during the week at a quiet time. The shop was busy enough. We saw a few people, but he was super focused on me. Absolutely perfect attention throughout. Did everything I asked for. We get to the point where I can see the exit, and I take my eyes off him for 2 seconds to check the exit, check there's no one nearby, and double check where I'm actually going so I don't walk into anything. And as I look down, having checked where I'm going, I've noticed he's cocked his leg on something, and I literally looked up like that, looked down, he's weeing, which is just super. So I go to the checkout and I go, I'm really, really sorry. Do you have anything I can clean up with? I then walk back to where he wees, and as I do that, some dogs approach, and Pumbaa decides that now he doesn't like dogs, despite being fine with all of the other dogs we've seen, which is just fantastic. And in this specific situation, I can't really do a whole lot. I don't want to leave the wee because I haven't got any like wet floor signs or anything like that. So I don't want to leave that in order to go and deal with Pumbaa. But in order to deal with Pumbaa, I can't deal with this. So I'm sort of stuck, and I move as much as I can, and I get like little aisles, barriers in between us and the dogs, and wait for them to pass, whilst also being able to warn people that there is wet floor and that there's wee, and not to let their dogs then wee on the wee. But Pumbaa is trying to react, so I'm trying to manage him whilst also communicate with people, whilst also clean up the wee. So that was a situation I was unprepared for. And at this point, like, I wanted to die when I'd seen that Pumbaa had weed in the shop. The fact that this dog has now just started reacting is just, I am dying from embarrassment. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is because whenever we have any dog, but specifically when we have a reactive dog, we get into the habit of getting to safe spaces. So like getting our training to the point where we have safe walks, where we can go and see certain people, where we can do safe things, and we get into the habit of just sticking with those safe things because we've got something that works, so why would we change it? But it's really important to push yourselves and to still go out and do stuff. And dogs are dogs. Dogs are animals. Sometimes we can do everything right. We can set the scenario up so that the dog shouldn't wee in the garden centre. Pumbaa had an abundance of wees before we went in this garden centre, and he was marking, not urinating. So I do believe that another dog had weed there before him, and he was just trying to communicate. Totally normal dog thing. Cannot really blame him for that. Do blame myself for not keeping an eye on him, but also I wanted to make sure that I wasn't walking him into a situation where he was going to react to someone. So you do what you do. But despite the fact that it was embarrassing, I don't regret doing it. I wish I had done it differently. This is still quite raw for me. It's still quite embarrassing, and it's very local. A lot of the times when he embarrasses me, I don't feel like people will recognise me. In that context, I do worry that someone will. But I'm telling you this because if you have a dog who you are not taking to certain places because you're worried that they will embarrass you, you should take them anyway. Your dog trainer's dogs embarrass them plenty. Your dog behaviourist dogs embarrass you plenty. agility handlers that go to Crufts, their dogs embarrass them plenty. Everyone, and especially when it comes to toilet accidents, how much of us love watching the toilet accidents at Crufts? I do. It's funny. I have had my dogs foul in rings, and when you're the handler and when that's your dog, your soul dies a little bit, especially if it was a really nice run and you were doing really well up until that point. Sorry, I had a phone call come through. So it's normal for even really highly trained dogs to have the odd toilet accident. Make a habit of going to particularly dog-friendly places because they'll be more understanding about this. So pet shops, it's probably unlikely to be a problem. Garden centres, as long as it's not on fabric floors or something like that. This garden centre I went to specifically because I know it's incredibly dog-friendly. I wouldn't go to a posher one that I didn't think was so dog-friendly. Start in places where your dog is allowed to be a dog. You're not going to get a lot of judgment for your dog barking at whatever it is. I am not saying if you have a reactive dog, go and take them into places where they're going to react lots and be really scared, and you are not working them under threshold. Pumba was 100% under threshold until I was trying to clean up the wee. And where that was a lot tighter. I wouldn't have chosen to put him in that situation had I had the choice. So this is just your daily reminder that dogs embarrass you. Dogs embarrass me regularly. Since Pumba's incident and me getting around to doing the social media around this, Sonic has had an incident, and I'm going to need some therapy from that one because it really, really, really was very embarrassing. So this is just your reminder that don't be afraid to let your dog embarrass you. Don't make your dog embarrass you. Don't put yourselves in situations where your dog is going to fail and then get embarrassed because they failed. Set yourselves up for success. I did not think Pumba would be in that shop. Otherwise, I would not have gone in the shop. But find it in yourselves to laugh at those things, because dogs are dogs. Dog behaviour is dog behaviour. And ultimately, we need to find love in the imperfections for our dogs, which is a slight different topic. But just remember that anyone's dogs can embarrass them, and most people's dogs probably do. It's just that we tend not to share that on social media. So this is my effort at trying to change that and trying to remind you that dogs can embarrass us sometimes, and we don't die. The world doesn't end, and we move on. And if dog professionals can have that, you're definitely going to get it as a pet owner.